Hello, I'm Kads, and welcome back to the free-to-play review part 2 for today. This video's topic is going to be centered around the Titan event, specifically the Victorious Titan event. Yes, centered around the 5-star soul, up to the 5-star soul for Pelops. I forget whatever his moniker is. But for Pelops, the most recent fusion, of course, you can get up to a 5-star perfect soul for this guy. So let's dive right in to this event. Now, Titan events at this day and age are pretty par for the course. Aside from like Yuletide Titan events where they're a little more special, they tend to be longer. Milestones are a bit higher. There's more events in general. But for the rest of the year, it's pretty par for the course, meaning that there are 1,750 points in total up for grabs, meaning that you have a buffer of 250 that you can skip in terms of the events and tournaments that feature Titan event points. And then you only need to get up in through 1,500 if you want to get the 5-star soul, but you could always stop anywhere along the way. It's kind of a choose your own adventure type of deal. So in terms of the rewards here, we've got, of course, the 1-star perfect soul, the 3-star perfect soul, the 5-star perfect soul, and then you also have the other event relics that we didn't get from the last deck of fate. I think it was the master deck of fate. I forget what it was called, or the Titan event. I forget what it was called. Anyways. But yeah, you get the Howling's Guardians, which I think is a pretty mediocre relic, the 3-star soul. And this time we get energy refills instead of energy nodes, notably Chaos Ore here. You get the Thunderbolt Spirit, which I happen to like. Granted, it's only good on niche champions who happen to already ignore shields. I kind of think that's the best place for it. So like a Baron, Arn is who I'm running it on. Narcisse is good. Void legendaries, I guess. But anyone who can ignore shields and is better off without a wand, perhaps, maybe, arguably. But yeah, more Chaos Ore, Mortal Soulstone, more energy refills, and then of course Milestone 5 is where you get the juicy stuff. 6-star Chaos Ore, Void Shard, Legendary Tome, Mythical Tome, and then of course the 5-star Perfect Soul. Now as always, these Titan events come with pros and cons. The pros are, of course, if you really like Pelops and you do plan to use him in certain areas of the game, or you just want to bank the soul for future content, then that is kind of the ultimate reward. There's, you get a Legendary Tome, even though it's relatively expensive. You get a Mythical Tome, which is pretty much on par probably for where they typically cost overall. Void Shard's nice, but the cons are, this is basically a mini fusion in terms of resources. You're going to have to pull some amount of shards in order to get this. You're going to have to participate in a lot of different events and tournaments, and so if you're wanting to take a break after the Pelops fusion, this is definitely not the thing you want to do. However, as we mentioned before, you don't have to do every single event. You could pick the 3-star soul, stop at 600, which is pretty easy to do. You could stop at 1,000 or anywhere in between. Along the way. Now for myself personally, I do always go for Titan events. I do one just to kind of show you guys what's possible to do in the end game as a free-to-play player, but also selfishly because I do I did it before, but selfishly nowadays I do really want that badge for completing 10 Titan events just so I can flex on my account. But yeah, we're halfway there. I've done every single Titan event since this badge has come out, and I've done everyone before that as well. But we have 5 more to go. I guess 4 more after this one to go, and then we can have our fancy red fiery badge or whatever. But definitely want to go for that. But yeah, so I go for every Titan event. That's kind of my my baseline. I have the resources to do so just because of the way that I play with a min-max approach, and so it does make it quite easy for me to play that way. Now, in terms of my supply count, what I like to do at the beginning of Titan events and fusions for that matter is take a snapshot of my resources at the beginning and then talk about it near the end, with a post on my community tab page highlighting the deltas in my specifically silver gems and shard count. So in this case, we're going to take a snapshot at, I'll call it 385 million. That's probably where I started off this morning. I've done a little bit of stuff. I run a little bit of energy before this recording, of course, and then 4750 on the gems, we'll call it there. So that's where we're going to start on the supplies, and then again we'll compare it in a couple of weeks to where we end. And typically or historically for Titan events, I usually net gain on gems, and we probably will lose a little bit on silver. That's just the historical precedent, but of course it depends on all of the events and tournaments. We don't know necessarily ahead of time. That said, thanks to the event calendar in the Player and Play client, we do have an idea of the first handful of events, and I populated them already in my spreadsheet here. Lovely spreadsheets. I do love my spreadsheets. But if you want a link to this, it will be in the description box down below. We are in the Titan event log tab. There are multiple tabs in the spreadsheet, so check them all out. There are various tools that may or may not be useful to you on your account. For anyone who's familiar with my Fusion Plan spreadsheet, this is the exact same one in a different tab, and so it's the same exact format where we highlight all of the events and tournaments and their respective milestones. Anything marked with an asterisk means it's a predicted value, but will change to whatever the value is when the event or tournament goes live. And so we have an idea of a little bit of what's going on here. So a couple of dungeons have been announced. These two are turn attacks at the top, if I could speak, Ice Golem and Fire Knight. There is a Dragon Special Tournament, which means there's going to be some some sort of challenge, some sort of restriction. So it could be one faction, could be multiple factions, could be rarity of champions, etc. We'll kind of see what that equates to. There's a Classic Arena tournament announced. There is a champion training tournament that's already live in the game, and we can see those milestones as they are. Relatively high, but champion training is also the most accessible thing in the game. There is a champion chase. That's kind of news to me, but there is a champion chase this coming weekend, so we're having back-to-back champion chases. Granted, this past weekend one was a 2x on all non-primal shards, so we'll see what the next one is. It could be 2x primals, I guess. I don't think so, just because we literally had one 2 months ago back in January, but it is also St. Patrick's Day holiday time frame, so maybe they can throw another one out there. I think it's a little bit too soon, to be honest. I don't know. 2 months, is that enough time? Let me know in the comment section down below. How many primals have you accumulated over the past 2 months? But I prefer when they're, you know, like 6 months-ish apart. That way you have time to actually build up a decent stockpile of them. But anyways, I digress. So there's one Gear Hunters announced so far. There's 2 gear enhancements announced so far, and so we'll kind of see what those entail. And a quick correction there, that these bottom values should have an asterisk, because the only thing that right now that is live is the champion training tournament. So those are the only confirmed values here on the right hand side. But yeah, this will be populated as we go throughout the Titan event. I'm filling out all of these just so you have an idea of what the event tournaments are / were. But also, if you care to go back in a little bit in time, we started these with the Ace Reporter Titan event last year, continuing with the Odyssey Titan event from this year. You can kind of see the breakdown of respective or previous Titan events and kind of get an idea or a feel for the milestones they typically run, as well as the amount of events and the spread of events that they usually do. So that is all potentially useful information for yourself. And then, of course, anything here that is in parentheses are the resources that I particularly used. So, like, for example, I pulled 20 primals back during the 2x primals a couple months ago. I pulled 100 ancients during the subsequent champion chase. Spent this much, 21 million, I guess, on average silver across all 3 of the events. I pulled some sacreds here, some mystery shards. I didn't do the deck of fate. Same thing here. So you can go back in history and see what I did in particular for each of these as well. And then the last thing to point out here is the bottom row here with the energy focus. This is not a prescription of where you should focus your energy, but it is just highlighting where I have focused my energy as kind of a guideline if you wanted to follow along. So for example, I'm wrapping up the Dragon tournament for the Pelops Fusion, and then I'll be focusing on the Champion Training tournament that just went live and kind of going on from there, training up the Fusion rares and the epics and whatnot to wrap up the Fusion. That being said, though, now that we know that there is a champion chase this coming weekend and the Pelops Fusion will be live in the game for, I think, 5-6 more days, I should be able to fuse Pelops during this champion chase and get a free 500 points. So that will be good in terms of getting towards the milestones. And we do know that this champion chase will have 300 points in there. So that most likely it's a 100 node and a 200 node. So just keep that in mind. It could be relatively costly to get all 300 points, but an extra 500 points will go a long, long way. So that is good for me or anyone else in that particular situation. So yeah, once again, this resource is available to you if you'd like to use it for yourself. Link in the description box down below. Now let's hop back into the game and just take a look at the current events. Like we mentioned, it's just the champion training, at least at the time of this recording, but we do have the known milestones for that here in the tournament. So 8100 there for the upper, and then 4200 for the lower. Again, these are higher than usual, but also there's more points in here than usual, which to me is a good thing, just because the more points you can get from the accessible, air quotes, events means that you're going to have to spend less resources on the less accessible events, i.e. pulling shards, whatnot. So 140 to me is a good sign. All you have to do is get out to 8,000 points in champion training, and you have 4 days to do so. But of course, if you want a stretch goal, which is what I usually go for, is getting out all the way out to 12,000 for the 4-star basalt. And then we also have the Ice Golem turn attack here that's going to be going live tomorrow. And usually that's around 2,000-ish points. I usually do these on the second day, as you can see, or you may have noted in my energy plan there, just because turn attacks are a lot easier than the normal dungeon tournaments. Just because depending upon how fast and how high your stages are, you can get a lot of points in a relatively few amount of runs and or energy. And so I usually just blitz that on the second day of any turn attack, depending upon, of course, the layout of the overall calendar or other events going on alongside it. So in this case, because there is champion training, which is going to be my primary focus, I will hold off on Ice Golem until the second day. But yeah, that is all that is live at the moment, I believe. And yeah, none of the events are starting, at least for the next day or so. All right, so that's going to do it for the free-to-play review of the Victorious Titan event. Let me know in the comment section down below what your plan is relative to this iteration of the Titan event. Do you care about the perfect souls for Pelops? Do you think it's worth going all the way out to the 1500 for the 5-star? Do you think milestone 3 is probably where you're going to stop? Do you care about the event relics, the other 2 event relics from this the epic and legendary relic from this event? Or have you crafted enough of them to kind of make this event not really worth pursuing? Let me know all of that and more in the comment section down below. As always, if you did find this video helpful, then be sure to hit that like button down below to just help out the channel, and feel free to hit that subscribe button down below as well, if and only if you're enjoying the content overall on this channel for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching and have a good one.